You know, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. Why is flying on a major airline one of the safest things a person can do, statistically speaking? But flying in a small, private plane, well, the safety record there still has a long way to go. The answer might not be what you think, and honestly, it points to a total revolution in how we should be training pilots.
Okay, let's just dive right in with the hard numbers. Take a look at this data from the NTSB. Between 2011 and 2018, general aviation, that's your private flying, saw over 3,000 fatalities. 3,000! In that exact same period, the major commercial airlines had just one. And no, that is not a typo. Just one. This isn't just a gap, it's a massive canyon. And it tells you loud and clear that the airlines are doing something profoundly different and profoundly right.
So yeah, that brings us to the big question, the one we're here to unpack. Why? How is that gap so incredibly wide? What is the secret sauce the airlines figured out that has basically eliminated fatal accidents? And more importantly, why hasn't that secret trickled down to the rest of the flying world?
Well, the answer starts to come into focus when you look at the very foundation of how we train pilots. Because here's the thing, the problem isn't the pilots, and it's not the planes. The data is pretty clear that the problem is what we're training for. It's like we're all studying for the wrong test.
I mean, think about it. If you're a pilot, think about your last flight review or your check ride. What did you do? A bunch of maneuvers, right? Steep turns, chandelles, lazy eights. But let's be honest, do those things have any real connection to the split-second decisions that actually cause accidents in the real world? And this is where it gets really wild. This slide shows a total disconnect between these two worlds. General aviation pilots spend hours and hours perfecting power on stalls, something airline pilots are, get this, never tested on. Meanwhile, airlines are constantly drilling things like rejected takeoffs or how to handle an emergency right after liftoff. You know, the actual scenarios that are known killers, but are almost completely ignored in most single-engine GA check rides.
And look, the source material just lays it out there plain and simple. We are spending our precious time and our money mastering skills that do not save our lives in a crisis, all while we're neglecting the ones that do. We're training for the check ride, not for the flight where everything goes wrong.
Okay, so if the current method is broken, what's the fix? Well, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to look at what the airlines have been doing successfully for decades. And it's all wrapped up in a philosophy called AQP.
AQP stands for Advanced Qualification Program. Now, it sounds all formal and complicated, but the idea is actually super simple. It's a system backed by the FAA that lets airlines basically toss out the old generic check ride playbook. Instead, they build their training around their own safety data. So no more generic maneuvers. They focus relentlessly on the specific, real-world scenarios that are known to cause accidents. And the whole philosophy really rests on these four pillars. It's not about memorizing stuff. It's about building real-world competence. It's driven by data, not by tradition. It's based on realistic scenarios, not abstract maneuvers you'll never use. And it teaches pilots how to manage risk and aims for true proficiency, not just, checking a box to pass a test.
So, okay, that's the theory. But what does this actually look like in the cockpit? Let's take two of the absolute biggest killers in general aviation and see how this AQP mindset completely flips the script on how we prepare for them.
Number one is loss of thrust on takeoff, or LOTOT. This is the big one. It's the nightmare scenario. Your engine quits right after you lift off the runway. The startle factor is just immense. And tragically, the pilot's gut instinct is almost always to pull back on the yoke. The problem is, you have, at best, maybe 8 seconds before the plane stalls and enters a spin you can't recover from. 8 seconds.
So the AQP solution isn't some complex 10-page checklist. It's a simple 3-step reflex. The second you hear that engine go quiet, you push. You get light in your seat, unload the wing. Then, you pitch for your best glide speed so you can keep flying. And only after you've done those two critical things do you then decide where you're going to put the plane down.
And this is the absolute key, right? This has to be pure muscle memory. In those first few seconds, there is zero time to think, no time to grab a checklist. You just react. And this is what AQP drills over and over and over again, conditioning that correct, life-saving response until it is completely automatic.
All right, another top killer is spatial disorientation. This is what often happens when a pilot who isn't rated to fly by instruments accidentally flies into clouds or fog. Without being able to see the horizon, your senses just start to lie to you. The pilot feels like they're turning when they're flying straight or vice versa, and this confusion almost inevitably leads to what's called a death spiral.
Now, the AQP solution here sounds completely backward at first, but it is absolutely brilliant. First thing you do, declare an emergency. That instantly makes you legal to be in the clouds. Then, and this is the genius part, you put on your view-limiting device, your hood. It sounds crazy, but it forces you to stop trusting your confused senses and start trusting your instruments. Then you fly the airplane, just focus on keeping the wings level. And finally, you tell air traffic control you need help. You're literally training to overcome the exact sensory traps that kill people.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? The data is crystal clear. The solution is pretty clear too. And the path forward isn't about more government rules. It's about a fundamental shift in our culture.
This has to be a grassroots movement. It's about you and me and every pilot and instructor out there choosing to adopt these data-driven scenario-based ideas. It's about us demanding more from our own training, our flight reviews, our practice sessions, and focusing on the skills that actually matter when our lives are on the line.
Ultimately, this entire AQP mindset can be boiled down to this one really powerful idea. The goal is not to just barely squeak by a check ride. The goal is to train for mastery, to practice these life-saving skills until the correct response is so deeply burned into your brain that you simply cannot get it wrong, even under the insane stress of a real emergency.
And so, that's the question I want to leave you with. Take a hard, honest look at how you train and how you practice. Are you just doing the bare minimum to stay legal, or are you truly preparing yourself for the single most challenging flight of your life? Because that's the flight that AQP trains for, and it's the reason thousands and thousands of airline passengers get home safely every single day.